In October 1969, Elvis walked into Mel's all-night diner in downtown Memphis at 3 a.m., soaking wet from a sudden rainstorm. He just needed coffee and a place to dry off, but when he sat down next to a night shift janitor who didn't recognize him, he heard a life story so beautiful it changed how he thought about success forever. Sometimes the most important conversations happen when you're nobody to somebody, and somebody shares everything with nobody. This is the story of 45 minutes that reminded the king of rock and roll what really matters. It was one of those October nights when Memphis weather couldn't make up its mind. Elvis had been driving around aimlessly, something he did when the walls of Graceland felt too close, when being Elvis Presley felt too heavy to carry. He was wearing a simple jacket, jeans, no jewelry, no flashy clothes, just trying to feel normal for a few hours. The rain came out of nowhere, a sudden downpour that turned the streets into rivers. Elvis pulled into the parking lot of Mel's all-night diner, a small place that served truckers, night workers, and insomniacs with decent coffee and no questions asked. He ran through the rain and pushed through the door, shaking water from his hair. The diner was nearly empty, just a waitress reading a paperback novel, a trucker finishing pie at the counter, and an elderly black man in work clothes sitting alone in a corner booth. Elvis took the booth next to him, ordered coffee from the waitress, and was content to sit quietly, listening to the rain on the windows and watching it stream down the glass. "Some storm," the man in the next booth said, not looking up from his own coffee. "Sure is," Elvis replied. "Came out of nowhere." "Weather's like life," the man said with a slight smile. "You think you know what's coming, then it surprises you." Elvis looked over at him. The man appeared to be in his 70s, with gray hair, weathered hands, and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen plenty of life's surprises. His work uniform had Henry embroidered on the pocket. "I'm Henry," the man said, extending his hand. "Henry Washington." "I'm Elvis," Elvis said, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you, Elvis. Don't see many young folks in here this time of night unless they're truckers or cops." "Couldn't sleep. Sometimes I just drive around when my mind's too busy." Henry nodded knowingly. "I understand that. Been working nights for 43 years, clean office buildings downtown. Usually get off about 2 a.m. Come here for coffee before heading home. Gives me time to unwind, think about things." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two men drinking coffee while rain hammered the roof. 43 years of night shift," Elvis said. That's a long time." "It is," Henry agreed. "But it was good work, steady work. Let me provide for my family, put my kids through school. Can't complain about work that lets you take care of the people you love." "You have children?" Henry's face lit up. 3. All grown now, all doing better than their old man ever did. My daughter Marie's a nurse at Baptist Hospital. My son James teaches high school mathematics. My youngest, Robert, he's a lawyer. Can you believe that? My boy's a lawyer. Elvis heard the pride in Henry's voice and felt something stir in his chest. "That's incredible. You must be proud." "Proud doesn't begin to cover it," Henry said. "See, I only got through 6th grade myself, had to quit school to work when my daddy got sick. But I promised myself my children would have what I didn't get. Education, opportunities, choices." Henry took a sip of his coffee and continued. "My wife Dorothy, she passed 5 years ago, but she lived to see all 3 kids graduate college. That was everything to her. Everything to both of us." "I'm sorry about your wife." "Thank you. We had 47 good years together. Met her when I was 19, she was 17. Prettiest girl I ever saw, and somehow she agreed to marry me." Henry chuckled. "Never did figure out what she saw in a skinny kid who cleaned buildings for a living." Elvis found himself leaning forward, drawn into Henry's story. What did she see? Henry thought about it for a moment. "She used to say I had kind eyes, said I worked hard not just for money, but because I cared about doing things right. Even cleaning somebody else's office, she said I took pride in it, made it shine." "She sounds like a special woman." "Oh, she was. Dorothy could make a house feel like home with nothing but love and laughter. We never had much money, you understand. I made enough to get by, keep the lights on, food on the table. But Dorothy, she made what we'd feel like abundance." Henry paused, looking out at the rain. "She'd sing while she cooked, had the most beautiful voice you ever heard. Could have been professional, But she said her favorite audience was just me and the kids, said making us happy was music enough for her. Elvis felt his throat tighten. Something about the way Henry talked about his wife reminded him of his own mother's love, unconditional and pure. What kind of songs did she sing? Everything. Gospel, blues, old folk songs her grandmother taught her. But my favorite was when she'd make up little songs about our day. Silly things like, Henry's coming home, got to get the cornbread done. But she'd sing it like it was the most important song in the world. They sat quietly for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. "You married, Elvis?" Henry asked. "I was. Didn't work out." "I'm sorry to hear that. Marriage is hard work, but when it's right, when you find the right person, it's the best thing in the world." Elvis nodded, thinking about how simple Henry made it sound, how complicated he had made his own marriage. "The thing about Dorothy," Henry continued, "is she taught me that success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you give. She gave everything to make our family strong, to make our house a place of love. And look what came from that. 3 children who are out in the world making it better." "Are you lonely now?" Elvis asked quietly. "Without her?" Henry considered the question carefully. "Lonely? Yes, sometimes, especially in the evenings when I used to talk to her about my day. But alone? No, I'm not alone. She's still with me in everything I do. And I've got my children, my grandchildren. Robert just had a baby last month, little Dorothy, named after her grandmother." Henry's eyes misted slightly. "You know what my granddaughter said to me last week? She's only 3 years old, but she looked up at me and said, 'Grandpa Henry, why do you always smile when you talk about Grandma Dorothy?' And I told her, 'Because remembering love makes you happy, even when it makes you sad.'" Elvis felt tears behind his eyes. "That's beautiful." "Children see things clearly," Henry said. "They understand that love doesn't end just because someone's not here anymore. It changes, but it doesn't end." The rain was beginning to lighten outside, but neither man seemed in a hurry to leave. "What about you, Elvis? What makes you happy?" Elvis hesitated. How could he explain the complicated relationship he had with happiness, the way success had brought him everything and somehow left him feeling empty? "Music," he said finally. "Music used to make me happy, but lately," he trailed off. "Lately it feels different?" "Yeah. Like I'm performing happiness instead of feeling it." Henry nodded slowly. "I can understand that. Sometimes work becomes so much about providing, about meeting expectations, that you forget why you started doing it in the first place." "Exactly," Elvis said, surprised by how well this stranger understood. "What made you love music in the beginning?" Henry asked. Elvis thought back to his childhood, to singing in church, to the first time he picked up a guitar. "It made people feel things. It connected me to something bigger than myself. It was like I could take all the feelings I had inside and share them with people, and they'd understand." "Sounds like what my Dorothy did with her little songs around the house, made everyone feel loved and connected." Elvis looked at Henry with new understanding. Yeah, it was like that. "Maybe that's still there," Henry said gently. "Maybe you just need to remember who you're singing for. When I started feeling like work was just work, Dorothy reminded me I wasn't just cleaning buildings. I was creating clean, safe spaces for people to work in. I was serving. Once I remembered that, the work felt meaningful again." They sat in comfortable silence as the rain tapered off to a gentle pattering on the windows. "Henry," Elvis said finally, "can I ask you something? Do you feel like your life has been successful?" Henry smiled. "You know, young man, success used to worry me. I'd see other men with bigger houses, fancier cars, more important jobs, and I'd wonder if I was doing enough. But Dorothy helped me understand something." "What's that?" "Success isn't about how high you climb or how much attention you get. It's about how much love you put into the world, and whether the people who matter to you know they're loved." Henry gestured toward the window. "My children know they're loved. My grandchildren know they're loved. I loved my wife every single day for 47 years, and she knew it. I did my work with pride and treated people with respect. I helped my neighbors when they needed help. I sang in the church choir for 30 years, not because I had a great voice, but because the music brought people together." He looked directly at Elvis. "At the end of the day, that feels pretty successful to me." The rain had stopped completely now, and the first hints of dawn were visible through the diner windows. The night shift was ending, and the morning shift would begin soon. Henry finished his coffee and reached for his wallet. "Well, Elvis, I should be getting home. Got to get some sleep before little Dorothy's birthday party this afternoon." "Henry, wait," Elvis said. "I want to tell you something." He reached up and, for the first time since entering the diner, really looked at Henry directly, letting him see his face clearly in the brightening light. "I need you to know that everything you just told me about your life, about Dorothy, your children, about love and success and what really matters, it's the most beautiful story I've heard in a long time. Your life it's like a perfect song, every note in the right place." Henry looked at him more closely now, and Elvis saw the moment of recognition dawn in the older man's eyes. "Lord have mercy," Henry whispered. "You're Elvis Presley, the real Elvis Presley." "Yes, sir. And I want you to know that I meant every word I said. Your story, your life, your understanding of what matters. It's more beautiful than any song I've ever written or sung." Henry sat back down, overwhelmed. I was just talking about my ordinary life. I didn't know I was talking to someone who needed to hear it," Elvis finished. "Henry, you've got more wisdom about life and love and success than anyone I know. Thank you for sharing it with me." "I can't believe this," Henry said, shaking his head. "My grandchildren are never going to believe their grandpa had coffee with Elvis Presley." Elvis smiled. "Tell them that Elvis Presley had coffee with Henry Washington, and that Henry taught him something important about what success really means." Over the next several weeks, Elvis found himself thinking constantly about his conversation with Henry. The old man's words about putting love into the world and making sure the people who matter know they're loved began to change how Elvis approached his music and his relationships. Elvis had his people quietly find Henry and arrange for a special gift, not money or charity, but something personal. He had a professional recording made of Dorothy Washington's favorite songs, performed by the Memphis Gospel Choir, and delivered it to Henry with a note. "For a man who understands that the most beautiful music happens when people love each other. Thank you for the lesson. Elvis." Henry treasured that recording until his death in 1982. His family said he played it every evening and would tell anyone who would listen about the night he met Elvis Presley at Mel's Diner. "Granddaddy always said that famous people are just people," Henry's granddaughter Dorothy recalled years later. "But he said Elvis was special because he knew how to listen. He said Elvis didn't talk about himself all night. He asked questions and really heard the answers." The story of Elvis and Henry became legendary among the regulars at Mel's Diner. The booth where they sat was eventually marked with a small plaque. Here, in October 1969, Elvis Presley learned about success from a janitor named Henry Washington. For Elvis, the conversation became a touchstone. Whenever the pressures of fame became overwhelming, whenever he lost sight of why he'd started making music, he would remember Henry's words about putting love into the world and making sure people know they're loved. "That night changed how I think about everything," Elvis told his spiritual advisor Larry Geller months later. "Here was a man who never made a record, never performed on a stage, never had his name in lights, but he raised 3 children who are making the world better, loved a woman completely for 47 years, and did his work with dignity and pride." Elvis continued, "Henry taught me that success isn't about being famous or making money or having people cheer for you. It's about how much love you put into the world, and when I sing now, I try to remember that. I'm not performing for applause. I'm putting love into the world." The influence of that conversation could be heard in Elvis's music for the rest of his career. His performances became more intimate, more connected to the human emotions behind the songs. He started paying more attention to the individual faces in his audiences, remembering that each person had a story as beautiful as Henry's. Elvis also began reaching out more to his own family, making sure they knew they were loved, spending more quality time with Lisa Marie, being more present in his relationships instead of just providing financially. When Elvis died in 1977, Henry Washington was among the mourners at Graceland. He told reporters that Elvis had been a young man who knew how to listen and who understood that the most important thing you can do for someone is make them feel like their story matters. Today, Mel's all-night diner is gone, replaced by a parking lot. But the story lives on as a reminder that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources, that everyone has something to teach us, and that sometimes the most important conversations happen between strangers at 3 a.m. in an all-night diner. Henry Washington never knew that his simple philosophy about love and success influenced one of the most famous entertainers in history. He was just being himself, a man who had learned that life's greatest treasures aren't found in wealth or fame, but in the love we give and receive every day. The story reminds us that we never know who might need to hear our story, who might be changed by our perspective, or whose life might be touched by our willingness to share honestly about what we've learned from living, loving, and losing. Sometimes the most beautiful songs aren't the ones with melodies. Sometimes they're just the stories of how ordinary people create extraordinary love in the world, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Elvis learned that in a diner booth at 3 a.m. from a janitor who understood that true success is measured not by how high you climb, but by how much love you leave behind. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this.